So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues, friends. Thanks for joining to the September edition of the monthly LGMA webinars hosted by ICLE Local Governments for Sustainability in its capacity as the focal point of local governments and municipal authorities constituency. My name is Yunus Khan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLE, and I'm performing the task of the focal point role of ICLE in the UNFCCC process. I am, I hope I'm sharing my screen. Yes, it's correct. This is around 1 hour of a webinar, and we would like to take you through the agenda, what has been achieved in the UN climate processes, and we will this time particularly focus on COP27 because things are now shaping relatively fast. It's just less than 50 days ahead. Usually our webinars are hosted every day or every Wednesdays at the 10 and 4 p.m. Monthly, and sometimes we have guests. Usually we lead this process as ICLE, both the advocacy team, but also the Cities Biodiversity Center is also joining us, especially to share their updates on the biodiversity negotiations. I'm very happy that Ingrid is with us here today. We also have time-to-time guests, and in the morning we had guests from UCLG and UN Habitat, and I am expecting anytime soon, if they have not arrived yet, my colleague also Leah from UNHabitat will also join us, and our colleague Pablo. It may be possible that he may not join this time, but we will check depending on his availability. We will also connect as well. For those who are new in this process, this is a 1 hour session, as we mentioned. It is recorded and also uploaded on the web the day after, both the presentation and the recording. We usually prefer to go through the slides first and then open this floor for space for discussion, where you could intervene, or during the presentation you can also type your questions or remarks. If it is extremely burning, we can respond immediately, but sometimes it's better to wait until the end because there may be some follow-up information. With this, I suggest we proceed immediately to the agenda. Basically, as we said, what is the most important thing over the past couple of weeks since our last dialogue in August is the Urban 7, and we will touch upon this. Then we will go to logistics of COP27 and agenda, calendar, the champions agenda, but we will spend significant time for the latest updates on the Surge initiative and the ministerial climate and urbanization ministerial. Hopefully by that time my colleague Leah will join us. We will spend some time on the multi-level action pavilion and global stocktake, and we will go through the agendas, upcoming agendas. And I know Ingrid has to leave early, so I will try to navigate so that Ingrid can intervene before in time before she leaves, so that if you have any questions, remarks, you can also share with her. Those who are familiar with LGMA, it's another abbreviation in the UN space, UNFCCC space, the climate space. It represents local governments and municipal authorities. This is the oldest constituency. There are 9 constituencies. We are the oldest, together with business and environmental groups, since 95. And because our engagement in the Global Task Force since 2013, we're representing Global Task Force in the UN climate negotiations. We have a network of those who are accredited to the UNFCCC, which is around more than 45 networks, but our outreach, our influence, our messages are also going beyond our influence, beyond our membership to the UNFCCC process. We know some networks may not handle it, this bureaucratical processes, but they are already contributing in the consultations and receiving updates. And of course, we are mainly in the negotiations agenda, but we're also contributing to the other processes, especially over the first 2 decades. We were relatively low profile, but when the Copenhagen process kicked off, we said that there should be a space for local and governments because UNFCCC Kyoto didn't have this. We reached this goal the Paris Agreement, and then immediately after Paris Agreement, we continue to engage ourselves into the process, thanks to our recognition in the Paris Agreement. And finally, we have received a good level of engagement that the term multi-level now is in the Glasgow Climate Pact, which we say time for multi-level action has come. Our website is just being updated, the citiesandregions.org, and there you can see how we can engage in the negotiations, how can we get in connect to the action agenda led by Marrakesh Partnership and high-level champions. How do we collaborate with the presidencies, because every year this is different because of the priorities of the presidencies, and how we also engage with friends of multi-level action as well, which are the countries whom we work in terms of implementation of multi-level action, but as well as influence the UNFCCC process as well. And the updated version of our website, now we have a dedicated page for COP27. It is now up and running. We will of course populate this with more information. There you could see our, let's say, timeline of activities with a visual that is following the coastal line of Sharm el Sheikh. But in practical terms, you can also find our four main priorities, which are around the implementation of multi-level at the NDCs, at the country level, but also introducing those forgotten topics like food, culture, and consumption, which are the drivers for climate emergency, and that if we do not address that, we cannot go to emergency mode. So that is something that is not being possible in the UN climate negotiations for so long. So we believe it is the right time to bring this on board. Of course, we have been pushing for a climate and urbanization minister for more than like literally 10 years. So I will touch upon this. So we are very, very proud that we have now the opportunity, thanks to the openness from the presidency and of course in collaboration with UN Habitat as the UN agency for urbanization. And of course, we are doing our best to empower our members or constituency members in Africa, Mediterranean, and you will see at the pavilion, we have a prominent role for them as well. The record of those webinars as well as the videos are all available on our YouTube channel so that you can consult later on. And we will continue our webinars, especially in the next one will be the last round before the COP starts. Just a recap, we made significant achievements at COP26 in Glasgow. On the way to Glasgow, we attended with new NDCs. Around 60 of them, or more than 60 of them, have raised their ambition because of their engagement with local governments. More than 1,000 cities and regions committed to climate neutrality and 2030 actions. We had more than 400 delegations in the Blue Zone. Multi-level action pavilion acted as our home for subnational partners constituency. It's the home for cities, towns, regions, and states in the UNFCCC space negotiations area. And as a result, we managed to get a new paragraph in the preamble of the Paris Agreement. We also have received relevant recognitions, especially in the paragraphs on also Glasgow program on ACE, the public awareness agenda as well. So we are saying that now it's time to deliver. That's why we are focusing our efforts for multi-level implementation, and we are proud that our achievements were a result of all the mobilization of partners, and which are the ones that you are seeing here as the partner pavilion partners in Glasgow, and we are even expanding further in Sharm el Sheikh as well. I will not go into this because we have made a brief reference to what we want to achieve at Sharm el Sheikh, and you would see that we have made achievements in almost all our agenda items, and of course there are still room to go forward. For those in the UNFCCC space, be aware, this is a cyclic process. So officially, it's the UK government who is responsible for the implementation, but the presidency, the incoming presidency, always prepares the agendas, the topics they want to focus on. And the leadership, we are working with Minister of Foreign Affairs. We have the champion. We also have Minister of Environment. But this year, even though it's not visible, over the past couple of months, we have seen an unprecedented engagement of other levels or other ministers, especially in our case, Minister of Housing, which is of course something that we are very proud because it is reflecting whole of government approach, and that it is also enabling us to address climate emergency and urbanization, multi-level action much easily in the UN climate community. Uh, on 13th and 14th of September, the first ever G7 Sustainable Urbanization Ministerial took place. That was remarkable because, as we said, this is the first time this group of countries are addressing this. And we are also very, very proud that the Urban 7 process, one of the newest networks in the city diplomacy or urban diplomacy, has been very prominently being engaged in this meeting. Our leaders, Mayor Kurz of Mannheim, on behalf of Global Parliament of Mayors, German Association of German Cities, and ICLE, was invited as an observer, but he was literally participating in all the debates, as well as UN Habitat Executive Director was also there. We have been observing that there was a very positive openness from the German G7 president since the beginning of the year, and with the G7 members, with the ministerial communiques on development, foreign affairs, and especially in climate and urbanization, climate and energy, climate and environment. And even at the heads of state level, the communique had an unprecedented references to cities, urbanization, and multi-level action. And this last ministerial complemented or consolidated or even elevated to its new heights, where we now see Urban 7 is recognized almost officially now in a new engagement group. Obviously, the engagement group, the design was done before, but the design of this session was clearly that we were part of the process, and we are very happy to hear the Japanese government, who will host the G7 presidents next year, has committed to continue the urbanization ministerial. And even better news, or even additional news, the ministers of urban climate next year will also have a special debate on urbanization, which is very, very relevant because the continuity of the outcome from Sharm el-Sheikh COP27 will have its ways or land in the G7 agenda among the others as well. So that gives us power and motivation to be much more ambitious at the Sharm el-Sheikh negotiations as well. For those who are interested in further details about how Urban 7 has been involved in the G7 process and the outcomes, there is a special event as part of the Daring Cities program next week on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Feel free to join us, and it is hosted by BMZ, the German Minister of Cooperation and Engagement Global and GIZ, but it is supported by the Urban 7 Alliance, as well as it is recognized as an affiliate of Daring Cities. We are confident that there will be a lot of inspirational discussions on how this process has evolved in time. Over the past couple of weeks, one of the important agendas was that we had joined as LGMA, one of the constituencies of the UNFCCC process, to the briefing, the logistics briefing of the presidency, the Egyptian presidency. It was an opportunity to hear updates on the technical preparations like accommodation, hotels, visas, transportation. Obviously, there were still some points for, let's say, clarification. There were some still unknown issues, and most of them focused on visas. And here we would like to particularly underline this issue. You could still access to these briefings and presentations through the links we have shared, and we can access it afterwards as well. The most important about the visas is it's a bit unique situation. First of all, it's the very warm effort from the Egyptian presidency that those who will be having blue zone access to the COP27 blue zone, those accredited institutions, delegations, their visa fee will be waived. However, this will only apply if you apply to the embassy of Egypt in your country. And we are also aware that sometimes having such a domestic travel and in-person visit to the embassy is even more costly than the price of the visa, which is $25. So it is highly likely that we are seeing this very, very common, that even though you are accredited to UNFCCC with a blue zone badge, that you can waive your fee, many participants are preferring to apply through the traditional or normal electronic visa process of Egyptian government. There you are recognized as a tourist, that everyone is tourist there, and this is very smooth. It's just processed in a couple of days. However, you have to pay the cost just like anyone else. So it's just a balance. But the most important thing is that every participant of the COP should make sure that they got one way or another their visa before they come to COP. The reason is that there are visa upon arrival process for some national governments, for some nations, but because of the expectation of around 40,000 participants, neither UNFCCC nor Egyptian government would wish to see long queues at the airport of Sharm el Sheikh or Cairo. Therefore, you are urged to get your visa before you depart for Sharm el Sheikh. Um, let's orient ourselves once again. This is more or less same at every COP, which is good because then it makes our lives much easier. Let's remember we have two main zones: the blue zone, the negotiations area, UNFCCC restricted. It's not possible everyone to come in there freely if they are not recommended by their national government or by their observer organizations. And the green zone, which is the one that is open for every citizen who is present in Sharm el Sheikh. We are all aware Sharm el Sheikh is a bit different than the previous COP host cities. For example, in Glasgow, we had huge interaction with the host city, similar to other COPs. But Sharm el Sheikh is one of the newest, let's say, young cities of Egypt. Especially, it is a boom with the tourism sector. And we also know the governorate of South Sinai has much more resources and authorities in the overall the management of urban development in Sharm el Sheikh, like many of the other Egyptian cities. So we are expecting that our agenda in Sharm el Sheikh will be much less active than what we have done in Glasgow or Edinburgh last year. Therefore, we are expecting limited engagement. There may be several slots or several sessions at the Green Zone, which is managed by the Egyptian government. But we as ICLEI, particularly because of our role as the LGMA focal point and our engagement in the UNFCCC process, we will spend most of our, like 95% of our time in the UNFCCC zone, blue zone. And this will be based on three, let's say, groups of engagement. One is the LGMA pavilion, which we'll discuss later on. The second is the UNFCCC agenda, which includes interventions in the official negotiations, interactions with the partners, parties, and the UNFCCC bodies, side events, official side events, and we are very happy several LGMA partners have already received confirmations of their side events. We will discuss, there will be presidency agenda and Marrakesh partnership agendas. So that is a UNFCCC part of engagement. And then there's another part, which is every many delegations are hosting their pavilions. This is the opportunity for networking. This is not only limited to national governments, partners like WWF or NDCP partnership. They're also hosting their own pavilions, just like LGMA multi-level action pavilion. So there is also a huge dynamism going on in these areas as well. So that is where we are in terms of our mobilization. In terms of our calendar, you may notice this is very similar to the Glasgow calendar. The terminology or the topics have some very slight adjustments compared to Glasgow, which is fine because every presidency has their own priorities, at least. For example, in the agriculture, we had now food systems as a new terminology, which also is good because we were asking food to be more visible in Sharm el Sheikh. So, but the important is that the first 2 days, in fact, the first 3 days, because this calendar doesn't show the Sunday, which is the official opening. 7th and 8th of November will be the World Leaders Summit, and that's the moment where we will now again see summit, and now this is called Sharm el Sheikh Implementation Summit, I guess. And that will also be the moment where there will be official opening of Global Climate Action Agenda. During these 2 days, the observers' access may be limited or restricted. There will be no UNFCCC side events, but the pavilions will be open. That's the advantage of hosting a pavilion. And we will design a special agenda there with our primary partners like Scottish government and others. But from 9 November, Wednesday onwards, it will be a traditional UNFCCC agenda. You will see all the UNFCCC side events are taking place. And then it goes until Thursday. And in fact, officially it's closing on Friday, if it is not extended further. So this is the calendar-wise look. This year there is additional innovations. Marrakesh partnership has started. the race to zero on the way to Glasgow as a prominent priority theme. Now there's also progress in race to resilience. So now they are converging, they are complementing each other. You can find the official report. But you will also find new innovations like breakthrough labs. There are thematic breakthroughs in addition to traditional thematic pathway discussions. And these agendas now are just being signed off by champions. And now it's time for the partners of this process to reach out their speakers and engagement, some of them in person, some maybe virtual as well. So that will be the next steps. And we will try to make sure there is visibility or engagement of local and regional government representatives in all these themes. This is a compendium of the spatial initiatives that Egyptian presidency has been mobilizing since the beginning of the year, and especially accelerated since the second half of the year. And we have to really commend the leadership and inclusiveness and innovation that the Egyptian presidency has demonstrated in these processes. It was impressive what they have done so far, and we're very happy that although we have started late, like around June, we have been one of the most solid and concrete initiatives over this period, and we will touch upon this when my colleague Leah also joins us. Let me check whether she's here. Patricia, Catalina, maybe you can just check whether everything is okay with Leah, because she just communicated with me in terms of her access, but it would be good if you can help us. So I will continue until a bit further, because now we can use the time that Ingrid can intervene until Leah comes. And if not, I can provide updates on the Surge initiative as well. As we said, presidency, in addition to Marrakesh Partnership, has its own initiatives and themes. And these are the topics that they will cover. The important thing is that there's a number of networking events, but some of the sessions have also some ministerial engagement. When we say ministerial, it's not the climate ministers. This is the ministers beyond climate sector. For example, finance have been there for like 6 or 8 years back. Agriculture ministers probably are coming this year. Last year, there were transport ministers. This year, for the first time, urban ministers are also invited. And they are now designing, together with the presidency, the first ever climate and urbanization ministerial. It's a long name, but the logic is that the holistic approach and inclusive multi-level action will be the theme. And we will touch upon it when we are discussing with Leah. But one thing I should address here, it's really it makes me proud and happy and excited, because this picture is the first negotiations on urbanization in the UNFCCC process. That was 10 years ago in 2013 in Warsaw. I was delighted and honored to be the keynote speaker at that session, which evolved then paved our way towards Paris Agreement and beyond. And in that presentation, when I was looking at all these discussions, I remember this was one of our proposals, very concrete proposal, to bring urban and climate community, to bring urban ministers, housing ministers to climate COPs. And I'm very happy. 10 years later, it's now coming up. Everything has its time. That's the strength and the beauty and the difficulty of the advocacy process, that things that you ask for cannot be taking place immediately. So you have to be patient, you have to be perseverance, and you have to be committed, and that you have to be clear that you're on the right track. And as long as you are solid on that, there will be a moment that it will come through. So we're very happy that this is coming. Let's park. I will not go into details because I would like to still give the chance for my colleague Leah. But in between then, let me not go to pavilion immediate, because I know Ingrid has a challenge. I suggest, if there is no burning issue, let's give 5 minutes to Ingrid so that she shares what's going on in the biodiversity space, and then we go back to the pavilion and then other agendas. So Ingrid, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I'll be quick, just to say that in the biodiversity space, Actually, this week, there's an informal group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework meeting. These are state parties only. It's not a negotiation. It is merely an informal group that has been tasked to review the text from the Nairobi meeting, which was held in June, to identify coherence, redundancies, consistencies, also to identify potential areas of technical compromise. And as far as those are concerned, then to provide some options for the way forward. And they will then, that outcome of their work this week will then be submitted to the fifth meeting of the working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and that will be also communicated through an information webinar. The fifth meeting of the open-ended working group is taking place directly before the COP, so that's from the 3rd to the 5th of December in Montreal in the same venue. And the idea of that fifth meeting is to essentially advance the negotiations ahead of COP based on the outcomes of the informal group meeting. ICLEI will be participating in Open-Ended Working Group 5 along with our other partners in the local and subnational major group to ensure that the ambitions and contributions of our major group are integrated into the Global Biodiversity Framework. So far, we've managed to ensure that as far as the whole of government approach is concerned, they recognize it's not just horizontal, but also multi-level. They have recognized the plan of action on subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities in the GBF. There are several references to our major group in the sections dealing with the purpose, enabling conditions. There's a specific target that is focused just on the urban environment. And we're hoping also to get inclusion into the new BBIS section, which deals with principles and approaches on the implementation of the framework. This is a particularly contentious section. COP15, the second part of the COP, is taking place from the 7th to the 19th of December. And one of the things that will come up during the COP will be the recommendation that was adopted in Geneva on the engagement with subnational governments. And that includes the plan of action that I referred to earlier. Although there is a lot of strong support for that decision and its plan of action, there are still some parties which would favor a weaker version. So we will be continuing our lobbying efforts to make sure that it is adopted and not just welcomed, but also to make sure that the ambition is not weakened. The high-level segment at the COP is scheduled from the 15th to the 16th or 17th of December. And then just to say very quickly that we will in the next few days be issuing a formal announcement on the 7th summit, which is taking place on the 11th and 12th, and that is specifically for subnational and local governments. Because this is such a significant and important COP, we are making this a very high-level summit, and we've actually proposed a 2-week program to profile the work that's being done in cities and subnational governments around the world. And we will also be obviously working together very hard with our partners. We will certainly, as soon as the announcement comes up, we will share it with all of our mailing lists, including this particular webinar mailing list. And we will, as part of our activities there at the COP, we will have a huge drive to profile cities with nature, regions with nature, and also to recruit more cities. And any city representatives in this webinar, please, I invite you to make contact with Stefania around that. And if anybody is interested in more information on the summit and our action program, please to get hold of me or Stefania. Eunice, I'll put our email addresses in the chat box for everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ingrid. Once again, congratulations. You are aware, although both biodiversity and climate are the legacy of the Rio Conventions, there have been institutionally differences in the way the negotiations are and the process are implemented for a variety of reasons. I don't want to go into details, but it's good that we, together with this good experience sharing, at least at the LGMA or constituency of the local and regional government constituencies, the more we can share our experiences, the more we can make sure we are much more effectively engaged in the process. There are some experiences that was not available to UNFCCC. The vice versa, in the climate space, there are things that we have done and it was not possible in the biodiversity space. For example, in the biodiversity, as you have heard, there is already an action plan that has been extended, so it is brilliant, but we are not there yet in the climate space. But pavilions, for example, is a culture that we have built over these years and it's coming just new. But with this exchange, I think we are making sure we're strong and we are bold and effective in both of these processes, and we are confident that in the age of emergencies, with more appropriate engagement in the climate and biodiversity agenda at the multi-level or through multi-level processes, we will be able to ensure and guarantee and give the hope to global community that we can deliver all our goals. So with this, I know you have to leave early. I have a point. Ursula from Under 2 Coalition is typing to you, Ingrid. Of course, Regions 4 has been involved as a core partner so for many years. And we're happy that Under 2 Coalition is also showing an interest. In fact, Scottish government has been both very active in the climate process because of being the host of the Glasgow summit, but also in the biodiversity space through the Edinburgh process, as you heard from Ingrid. Ursula, Scottish government will continue to be very actively involved in the biodiversity space as well, just like they're in the climate summit or the COP in Sharm el-Sheikh. And because of their role under the Under 2 Coalition, I think there's also a huge opportunity that Under 2 Coalition is also actively engaged through Scottish government, through ICLEI, into biodiversity space as well. I see now, yeah, Ingrid is also sharing. Actually, Ingrid, you also shared it with the panelists only. Yeah, Patricia will help us. So with this, let's go back to the agenda. I am delighted to inform you that my colleague Leah from UN Habitat has joined us in a couple of minutes. I heard she was already a participant of this webinar, so she probably have watched or listened to our discussions. So Leah, in the morning we had Serin sharing updates on the urbanization ministerial at COP, as well as the Surge initiative. So it's up to you how you would like to proceed. If you have your own slides, you can use this if you want. If you not, we can use the one that we have here. But thanks for your time, and great to see you again, and the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Yunus. Pleasure being with you here this afternoon for the afternoon session. I know Serene joined in the morning, unfortunately had other commitments and another presentation to give. I have some slides, so I'd be happy to share them. Yes, I was just going to say you need to stop sharing. Give me one moment. This is now always the tricky part. Okay. And now the panel. Okay, you can see it all right? Perfect, great, thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. Happy to give you a really brief update about where we stand with the Search Initiative as well as the ministerial meeting. I know many, Yunus has already spoken about this in the August meeting, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but still think it's important to have a little bit of a background here, and also thank you all for the fantastic collaboration that we've already had so far on this, and the great engagement in many of the meetings over the past month. So maybe to say, I mean, this is the COP27 presidential initiative on sustainable cities, done by UN Habitat, of course, also facilitated by ICLEI. We had a first stakeholder meeting at the World Urban Forum, approximately 50 participants, large workshop in Cairo with approximately 120 participants. The draft was reviewed in a consultation process, and now this was being presented to member states of UN Habitat in a briefing by our executive director just 2 weeks ago in Nairobi. So it was a presentation to member states, but also to core partners, and Yunus also joined us there, so it was great to see you there. So that's just a little bit on the involvement, what has led up to this initiative. Where we currently stand is that we have a draft that has just been cleared for circulation, just waiting for the last updates to be made. And then we will also happily make this draft available in its most recent version to everybody. So what you see here is of course an overview, but you can read all of this up in the draft document that's very short, 6 pages, but should give you a good gist of the initiative. It builds, of course, on the recognition that cities have been recognized in the Glasgow preamble, but that this is not enough. We still have gaps when it comes to multi-level governance. There's not enough finance going to cities, not enough local capacity, lack of access to technology and innovation, and always the issue of ensuring equity at the local level when it comes to measures and climate measures. And this is where this initiative plugs in as an objective to really build these sustainable, resilient, and healthy cities. There are 10 guiding principles that have been co-created as part of this initiative. Maybe I should say what SURGE stands for: Sustainable Urban Resilience for the Next Generation. These 10 guiding principles, you can see them on the slide, you can read up about them, are there to guide us in the process. And now where it gets really interesting is the working groups that have been co-created under this initiative. 5 working groups: buildings and housing, urban energy, urban waste and consumption, urban mobility, and urban water. I'm assuming many of you, I know that many of you have already signed up to join these working groups, so I guess you're also eager to hear a little bit more about what's going to happen between now and COP on these working groups. So maybe to say, the governance structure of these working groups, the idea is to have co-chair, champion co-chair from national governments chairing these working groups, with the idea that these are also the national governments who hopefully can provide some financial support to the topic itself, that allows us to really use the work that is already done, the fantastic work that has already been done on these themes, and put them on another step and elevate them and get more funding to work on these topics, hopefully with the support of champion governments giving financing to this, and then having technical co-leads, not only international organizations, but also, of course, local government organizations, who are then working to implement these working tracks and working on several issues, working on priority actions. And this is also where the next steps for this initiative come in, that between now and COP, we're hoping to convene these working groups, identify at least interim working group leads. We want to make sure it's an inclusive process, but having also working group leads who can work on this in an interim phase while we figure out everybody who can contribute and be supportive of this process. And then identifying for each working group what are some challenges that pertain to this issue, and what are some key priority actions that we need to tackle in order to advance on this topic. So we're hoping to have all of this ready by COP, and working with an also interim global secretary to facilitate and make this happen. The idea is to make sure that this SURGE initiative is then an integral part of the ministerial meeting. Just as a background, for those of you who have not or who are hearing about this ministerial for the first time, I mean, Yunus just mentioned it beforehand, that the community has been fighting for 10 years to make this happen. So we are really, really happy to announce that this will happen on the 17th of November. It has been also requested by our constituencies of mayors and cities and local governments, as well as our permanent members to the UN Habitat governing bodies. And in last March, there was this request at the UN Habitat Executive Board meeting by the member states to request the COP27 presidency to explore such a ministerial meeting. And as Yunus mentioned beforehand, this is really a breakthrough and an important, really important step for bringing cities to the COP agenda, highlighting the importance of multi-level climate action. So this is, as I mentioned, set for the 17th of November as part of Solutions Day. It's this Housing and Urban Development Ministerial Meeting on Cities and Climate Change, quite a long name to take in, fully aware of that. But the idea is to not only bring together ministers for working on housing and urban development, but also ministers, environment and climate ministers, and of course with a strong presence from mayors and representatives from the LGMA constituencies, as well as from the youth and private sector and academia, to really make sure this is an inclusive ministerial meeting. We've been pushing very hard to make sure that there's a strong non-state actor participation in this ministerial meeting, to have it as an inclusive process and also as a message that the entire community can stand behind. To say that, you know, invitations to both the ministries and non-state actors will be dispatched soon. So we're working to make that happen and working full speed to get us there in the lead up to the 17th of November. I'll stop here and hand it back over to you, Juno. Of course, happy if there's any questions.
Thank you, Leah. Yeah, it will be really good if you can stay until the end, because I, just like in the morning, there were already interest. So we are also expecting there will be some feedbacks. And as you said, we are very happy this contribution and engagement from the LGMA constituency. So it is making us proud that we're really contributing. And that's what we have said as Mayor Sefiani in his video message to Nairobi consultations briefing, that we are happy because main of the three reasons. First of all, this is for the first time a holistic approach to urbanization is being discussed, not just one sector or only the easy ways or only those who can do this process. It's holistic, inclusive, and that's why you can see all these sectors on board. There were a lot of time these topics were not discussed in the climate process. Secondly, it is inclusive. It is really that we are an active partner. We are very appreciative of the UNF, the COP27 presidency offering this, let's say, opportunity for us to engage in equal terms, and we are really able to shape together and then deliver together as well. And finally, as you mentioned, this is something that is not limited to our community. We are confident this will move a lot of things in the climate agenda. We are all aware there are concerns that climate targets or climate ambition is getting lower because of the geopolitics and other stories. We believe the more local energy programs are on board, there will be more opportunities for addressing climate emergency. So it's a win-win for everyone. So that's a fantastic opportunity. As you said, it's not over yet. We are still at the beginning of this process, but we are making definitely a big process. So let me continue. As far as I know, there are not immediate questions. I see one message from Shannon about accreditation. Let's focus on the pavilion because that's also related to this. But if there are any questions, we can come back to Leah again. Yes, let me continue to share my slides. The pavilion of local governments, which is the home for cities, towns, and regions at the UNFCCC negotiations, will be in the blue zone. It's this blue area where you can see here in the middle of it. Obviously, they're all constructed tents, and in fact, those who are familiar, it doesn't matter which city, which continent goes. When you enter to the blue zone, it's all the same UN atmosphere. So here is also the initial sketch of our space. We are still in the working of it. It is slightly larger than the Glasgow area, the one that we had in Glasgow. We would wish to have a bit bigger, but as you have all noticed, the financial constraints are still not very clear until last moments, and therefore we wanted to be conservative so that we deliver our promises, but we are confident that this pavilion will be a default agenda for us in the future years, and we hope that it could even be bigger in size and its outreach and in interactivity. However, in that space at the moment, we are already confident that we will have again a similar podium and an audience, a theater style. This will be fully hybrid. All sessions will be broadcasted as well, and there will be speakers even intervening during the sessions that are hosted by partners on site, and people can watch and comment, and even translations will be through the virtual facilities, so that we will save space in physical area, but there will still be connectivity availability. And we will also have the screens which will offer us to use in terms of videos or slideshows that will complement the debates or between. And the bilateral meeting room will also be available for those who are hosting sessions at the pavilion for their preparations as well. Um, Here is the tentative calendar. You may have noticed that we have not just limited ourselves only to the presidency and to the champions, and that's the strength of why we are having our own pavilion and own agenda, because we have priorities that has not been addressed yet by the UNFCCC process. For example, you can see the titles of the themes. For example, climate emergency is not addressed into the titles, and we want to make it very prominent. We will discuss about the stock take is also coming up. We would like to talk concretely loss and damage. It is something that is important for us, especially looking at Scottish government, who had been the champion of this process. We would, for example, if it is a question of finance, we will also like to discuss about direct access or procurement, or if it is energy, you want to talk about 100% renewables or demand side management. So there's a plethora of topics that we will not like to limit ourselves only to those presidency or champions, but it's something that it will enrich the climate debate. And that's why we can easily have these discussions with, because when you go to the UN space, obviously you have to respect, abide by some sort of limitations or principles. The second additionality or feature of this space is that you may have noticed the side events of the UNFCCC is starting on the 9th of November onwards. However, we will be able to use the pavilion probably on 7th and 8th, but it is still not clear on what conditions. That will give us the chance that we could use this even during the high level segment at the heads of state level. And we really would like to highlight this, because we have seen a number of, especially what you have seen in the G7, Commonwealth, we have now more and more governments who have been led by urban leaders, including our host country. Prime Minister of Egypt is an urban planner. So it is highly likely, thanks to the leadership from Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon and so many other leaders, we expect on the 8th of November, there will be some high level discussions as well. This will also help us to secure that by the time we reach to 17th of November, we will already make progress, and that there will already be visibility on the negotiation text, that we will be making sure that our reference to multi-level action is going beyond one word in the preamble to now a paragraph or a couple of sentences or a couple of paragraphs, so that it really shows that the second phase of the Paris Agreement is through multi-level action, and cities and regions are the ones that are driving the global climate community to emergency. How will we manage that? You have seen that we have reserved daily briefings, of course, but we have reserved full 2 hours every day to African cities and regions. That is our really proud offer, because it's a solidarity that we will. These spaces are costly. These spaces are not simply just because this is commercial area. But thanks to Scottish government, and now we're confident that we have more than 10 partners from LGMA, UN Capital Development Fund, UNDP, governments of Japan, Germany. They are all considering how will they support this process, so that we can manage the space available for our African cities and regions, so that they can freely discuss and share their experiences. Our colleagues from ICLEI Africa Secretariat will be reaching out to African partners so that they use this space as a bottom-up African-driven slots. The rest will be shared according to the applications we received so far. As I said, the deadlines was last week. We are now in the processing. The applications as of today, we are expecting that all of them will be accommodated for those partners who have submitted their interest. We may expect that they may not be able to get all the dates and times as they wished for. That's why we asked for 3 options. But by the end of this week, you will receive first communications, and we are aiming to make the first announcement at the Daring Cities closing plenary on the 7th of October next week. And I'm also proud to tell you that the Minister of Housing, based on all these discussions, is also engaging in this agenda as a co-host of the space, which encourages us, which motivates us even further. Last year, Glasgow was one of the co-hosts along with the Scottish Government. This year, it's the National Minister of Housing, and we will also continue to seek engagement of Governorate of South Sinai as well. But we haven't confirmed anything deal yet at the moment. This is what we have, the type of atmosphere we had in Glasgow. We will look forward to replicating this success and even go beyond. We will go beyond this. For example, we're already in touch with the Marrakesh partnership that some of the events that they are considering to host could be also hosted in our pavilion based on our limitations or based on our resources available. So we will do our best to accommodate that. Multi-level action pavilion is also feeding into the action agenda as well. The last part of our discussions is on global stocktake. You may remember it started in June. Actually, it started already in the beginning of the year. The main achievement we had in the stocktake is that the process, based on our very aggressive advocacy and inputs, the conclusions from June says that stocktake can also take place at the local and national level. That is an extremely important opportunity. We will make sure that we will replicate the Talanoa spirit, that cities and regions will host their own stock takes so that they can feed into the global process. Our proposal is that we would like to design this stock takes as an opportunity for driving our communities and governments for climate emergency. As you have heard, the climate emergency is not in the radar, neither in the national level or global level, but we believe the mobilization around this topic will give us the power and the momentum to focus on climate emergency level of action. We will try to use the Talanoa model. Where are we? Where do we want to go? How do we get there? And we would like to focus on the national commitments and how it is related to our urban action. What are the local and regional commitments? All these races to zeros and climate neutrality. And how do we address climate justice at home and globally? And we would like to make this from now until next year, June, which is the third technical dialogue minimum. And at just before this third technical dialogue, we would like to convene the multi-level global stock take so that we could provide these as an input to the process. And then it will not be over, because the last dialogue, the last negotiations on stock take will continue at COP28 in Dubai, so that we can still make use of our mobilization through this process as well. Last slide. Urban October is coming. It is an extremely valuable opportunity that urban community shows its ambition and passion and capacity just the week before the COP starts, so that by the time COP starts, we will have a huge mobilization in Urban October. So many of our LGMA partners are convening their events. Daring Cities will be the place where we will discuss climate emergency, and that's the moment where we'll also release our pavilion calendar and stock take for climate emergency. And we will also talk about how do we address financing climate emergency. On the same dates, there will be the Climate Chance Africa Summit, as well as focusing on mobility. We are checking how we can support or engage in the pre-COP hosted by the Democratic Republic of Congo. And in Cote d'Ivoire, Abidjan will host the Finance Your City session. In Buenos Aires, C40 will have their own World Mayor Summit. And of course, pioneering megacities will also refresh their commitments. UCLG will convene in Daejeon in the middle of October, where they will announce their Pact for Future and where we are proud to contribute in this process. It will also introduce a new political momentum with bottom-up initiatives. And we heard this from Pablo this morning. That you can watch the recording of the morning session when we circulate you the links. And Committee of the Regions will also convene on the 12th of October to consolidate their position towards COP27. We are very happy. Both ICLE's climate envoy for COP27 ministers, Sharon Dixma, Mayor of Utrecht, and Mayor Sefiani, both of them were participating in the Katowice and Cairo consultations, and in Nairobi. They will be attending these meetings, and they will share their experience with the European Committee of the Regions delegations as well. So this means that by the time we reach to Sharm el Sheikh, a huge momentum will be built, and we will show this power at the pavilion, and we will make sure that by the end of the Sharm el-Sheikh, we will reach to this new era. The new multi-level climate action is being in practice, and with that, then we will go to Montreal to connect to the biodiversity. This is our updates on terms of our preparations. As we said, we will have one more preparations for preparatory webinar on the 19th of October, just before the COP. That will give us at least 10 more days to go forward. By that time, there will be more updates as well. Now, it may be good for us to give a break. Leah is here, I assume. She's still on the line, and we are open to any questions, remarks. I see, for example, from one feedback from our colleague from Halifax. I think she was Shannon Miediema. She was asking whether those who have Blue Zone badges can access everywhere. Primarily, yes, but let's be aware, there are certain areas that are restricted to high-level days, for example, heads of state or ministers. There are several slots or several locations that we may not enter, or only a limited number of observers can attend, which means that we have to have our tickets that will be sharing or rotating among ourselves. But overall, most of the cases, there is accessibility for all those Blue Zone holders. And in the negotiations, if there is a contact group, if the parties decide to keep it closed, then we may not be access to that. And this depends on the color of your badge. If you are accredited through, for example, Shannon, through the Canadian delegation, if you're on the overflow, you can access much freely. But if you are through FCM, for example, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which is one of the members of the LGMA, or ICLE or C40 or whatever, you may not be able to access in these rooms. So there are certain restrictions as such. But overall, the message is yes. Canadian delegation, Shannon, great. And we would be looking forward to engage with you, because our members who are in the national delegation are extremely valuable source of information for us, and they're extremely source of bridging for us to the delegations. And with Canadian delegation, we are looking forward to engage, of course, actively. They are the ones who have positioned this famous preamble paragraph in the Paris Agreement, and they are the ones who have one of the most ambitious NDC with reference to provinces and cities in Canada. So we would be very happy that if you can help us to continue our dialogue with the Canadian delegation. So it's good to hear you joining us. Any additional points, remarks? We can, of course, keep this one shorter if we need it. Because if there's no more points, we are easily announced that we can conclude. Leah, maybe I could give you back, if like a closing remarks, anything that you would like to add or compliment or comment. Feel free to take this as your opportunity to compliment if you want.
Sure, thank you, Yunus. I mean, maybe one thing I have not mentioned beforehand is there have been so far approximately 70 organizations that already signed up for CERT. So there's really a big momentum behind this. And not only organizations, but also national governments who've already actively endorsed and given their support for the CERT initiative. So it's a massive momentum that's building up around the topic, which is fantastic. I mean, that's really great to hear, and really builds and fits well with what you have just mentioned here, you know, that there is a push to make this happen, and that there is a big window of opportunity that is opening up, and we are here to build on all the efforts that have happened in the past years to make this a success.
Excellent. That was very good that you mentioned this, because as we have listened in the Nairobi workshop or Nairobi briefing, there are already nations who have demonstrated their endorsements, mainly from the Global South. And we will continue to increase this, of course, as LGMA. We will reach out to the national government. We will also rise to reach the Global North, so that this is also supported, endorsed, and That is one of the reasons why Mayor Dijksma is involved as an envoy. There will be more efforts. We will continue to reach out to our partners in G7 and other processes. So it is still a lot of homework to do. So we have to bring our power and this motivation and also the trust among our national governments to this process. So it's good that you mentioned this. Hopefully by the next presentation we will be able to announce these from the global north and the global south. So a lot of things will be moving in the next couple of days. I read Shannon providing feedbacks. She's from Federation of Canadian Municipalities. That's excellent. In fact, they are also one of the Urban 7 partners, and she's there with the Big City Caucus mayor, mayor of I think yeah, you said Nova Scotia, or if did I say it wrong? But be aware, Shannon. The Simon Fraser University hosted also a slot at the multi-level action pavilion, and we're in touch with our colleague. They will also continue to host another one, so you may also consider to support them, and let's stay in touch for next steps. So with this, I think we really reached to a closure of, or Halifax, sorry, yeah, Halifax mayor is the Big City Caucus mayor. That's great, and I remember we had been connecting through FCM on that front as well. Good. So thanks for all your interest. Thanks for all your contribution and engagement, and you will receive the links tomorrow, and let's stay in touch, and we look forward to engaging further, hopefully towards, at, and beyond COP27. Have a nice day. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.